Welcome back to F1 Burnouts. I'm your host, and today we're going somewhere special. We're talking about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Everyone's obsessing over the 2026 Active Aero, the new cars, who's going where, but there's something bigger happening, something that could genuinely change the world. And I'm not being dramatic here. We're talking about fuel, sustainable fuel. And before you click away thinking this is going to be some boring chemistry lecture, stay with me. Because what F1 is doing with fuel in 2026 is genuinely one of the coolest things in the sport's 75-year history. They're literally making petrol out of thin air. I mean it, thin air. So here's the deal. From 2026, every single car on the grid will run on 100% sustainable fuel. Not mostly sustainable, not 50-50, 100% zero fossil carbon. That's the mandate from the FIA, and it's absolute. Now, let me explain why this matters so much to me personally. I care deeply about climate change. I think F1 has a responsibility here. And for years, the sport has faced legitimate criticism about its environmental impact. But this is F1 actually doing something meaningful. Not greenwashing, not marketing speak, real engineering solving real problems. All right, let's get into the science. And don't worry, I'll make this fun. So, regular petrol, what we've been using for a century, comes from fossil fuels. You dig up carbon that's been buried underground for millions of years, you burn it, and that carbon goes into the atmosphere. It's new carbon that wasn't there before. That's the problem. That's climate change in a nutshell. But sustainable fuel, completely different game. You're taking carbon that's already in the atmosphere or in waste and turning it into fuel. So when you burn it, you're not adding new carbon. You're just recycling the same carbon. It's like, imagine if your car ran on your recycling bin. Kind of, sort of. Work with me here.
Now here's where it gets properly sci-fi. There are a few ways to make this fuel. You can use municipal waste, literal garbage from cities. You can use agricultural waste, stuff from farms that would otherwise just decompose. Or, and this is the one that blows my mind every time, you can literally pull carbon dioxide out of the air and turn it into petrol. I'm not making this up. They call it e-fuels, or power to liquid, and the process is absolutely fascinating. Step 1, you take water, plain old water. You run electricity through it, renewable electricity from solar or wind, and it splits into hydrogen and oxygen. Basic electrolysis. You might remember this from school. I certainly do, vaguely. Step 2 is where it gets wild. Carbon capture. Companies like Aramco have these massive industrial facilities with giant fans that literally suck CO2 out of the air. Picture it, giant fans pulling carbon out of the sky. It sounds like something from a science fiction movie, but it's real. It's happening right now. So now you've got hydrogen from the water, carbon dioxide from the air, and then you combine them through something called the Fischer-Tropsch process, named after two German scientists from the 1920s. The 1920s! This chemistry has been around for 100 years. What's new is doing it sustainably, at scale, with renewable energy. That's the breakthrough. And at the end of all this, you get what they call drop-in fuel, meaning you could literally drop it into any normal car and it would work, no modifications needed. Chemically, it's almost identical to regular petrol. Max Verstappen's car will run on fuel made from air and water and electricity. That's not a metaphor. That's literally what's happening in 2026. Now, I'm an engineer at heart, so I have to be honest with you about the challenges. This process isn't perfectly efficient. You lose about half the energy along the way. It's expensive, it's energy intensive, and the technology needs to get better. But here's the thing. That's exactly why F1 is the perfect place to develop it.
Think about what F1 has done before. The hybrid technology from 2014? It's in road cars now. Kerr's energy recovery? Same thing. F1 takes bleeding-edge technology, pushes it to the absolute limit, and eventually it gets cheaper and more efficient for everyone. That's the pattern. That's what we're seeing with fuel. And consider this. There are over 1 billion cars on the road right now that run on petrol. 1 billion. You can't replace them all overnight with electric vehicles, but if you can make sustainable fuel work, you don't need to replace the cars. You just change the fuel. The infrastructure already exists. That's why this matters beyond racing. Okay, let's talk racing, because I know that's why you're really here. How does this affect the actual competition? And oh boy, this is where it gets spicy. Not all sustainable fuels are created equal. The regulations set an energy density range between 38 and 41 megajoules per kilogram. That's how much energy you get per kilo of fuel. Now, there's a limit on how much energy you can use per hour, 3,000 megajoules, same for everyone. But here's the clever bit. If your fuel is at 41 megajoules per kilo instead of 38, you need less fuel to hit that energy limit. Less fuel means less weight, and in F1, every kilogram costs you about 0.3 of a second per lap. Do the math. A team with denser fuel could gain a massive advantage. Christian Horner called it the biggest area of differential for 2026. And knowing Red Bull, you can bet they're optimizing this at the molecular level, because of course they are. That's so on brand for them. So let's look at who's supplying whom. Ferrari has Shell, which is the longest partnership in F1 history. Mercedes has Petronas. Red Bull has ExxonMobil. Aston Martin has Aramco. And here's where it gets interesting.
Aramco might have a serious head start. They've been supplying fuel to Formula 2 and Formula 3 since 2023. All 52 cars in those championships ran on Aramco's sustainable fuel throughout 2025. That's hundreds of races of real-world data, while other suppliers were still in the lab. Reports say they've tested 39 different fuel blends for F1 and finalized their spec way back in July 2024. They're ahead, and that could be huge for Aston Martin and Honda. Imagine Fernando Alonso fighting for wins again because of a fuel advantage. What a story that would be. Now, as much as it pains my papaya-loving heart, I have to give credit where it's due. Look, you all know I'm a McLaren fan. I don't hide it. But good engineering is good engineering, regardless of who's doing it. And what Aramco has done with their development program is genuinely impressive. McLaren will be running Petronas fuel in 2026, same as Mercedes, Williams, and Alpine. Petronas has been documenting their whole development process, and they seem confident. But are they as far along as Aramco? Honestly, I don't know. And that uncertainty makes me nervous as a fan, but excited as an engineering enthusiast. But here's where I need to put on my critical hat. Ferrari. Oh, Ferrari. There have been some concerning reports about Shell's fuel development. Some insiders are saying it might be the least advanced on the grid. Weeks before Barcelona testing, apparently there are still unresolved complications. Lewis Hamilton leaves Mercedes after all those years, goes to Ferrari for what should be an incredible final chapter, and the fuel might not be ready? That would be so typically Ferrari, wouldn't it? I say that with love. Sort of. Okay, mostly with frustration. Get it together, Maranello. But look, Shell is massive. They've got the resources to catch up. I'm not writing them off. Ferrari has pulled off miracles before. And honestly, I hope they figure it out. The sport is better when Ferrari is competitive. Every team matters. Every team has engineers working incredibly hard.
Now let's talk about the power unit changes, because 2026 isn't just about fuel. The whole engine is transforming. For the first time ever, exactly half the power comes from the electric motor. Half! That's about 470 horsepower from electricity alone, triple what it is now. They're also getting rid of the MGU-H, which is that complicated turbo energy recovery thing that, honestly, nobody really understands, including most engineers I talk to. But it was crucial for efficiency, so now they have to recover way more energy from braking instead. And here's a stat that blows my mind. In 2013, F1 cars used 160 kilograms of fuel per race. By 2020, it was down to 100 kilos. In 2026, 70 kilograms. Less than half what it was a decade ago. And the cars are still just as fast, maybe faster. The efficiency gains have been incredible. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. What about the loopholes? This is F1. There are always loopholes. And you're right. The FIA standardized the fuel flow meter. Everyone uses the same sensor to measure energy flow, so you can't cheat the 3,000 megajoule limit. Sounds airtight, right? Mercedes and Red Bull apparently figured out that if you cool the fuel before it goes through the meter, you can game the reading somehow. Brilliant! Devious. Absolutely classic F1. The FIA banned it immediately, of course. But there's apparently another thing with compression ratios being exploited. I don't fully understand the details, but that's the nature of this sport. Plug one hole, two more pop up. It's going to be cat and mouse all season. Let me talk about something close to my heart for a moment, the women working in this field. Because sustainable fuel development isn't just happening in the male-dominated world of pit stops and race strategy. There are brilliant female engineers and scientists driving this technology forward. Pat Simons, F1's chief technical officer, has been leading this initiative. But the teams developing these fuels have diverse teams of chemists, engineers, and researchers. The more perspectives we have in the room, the better the solutions we find. That's just good science. And to the smaller teams, Williams, Alpine, the Racing Bulls, I want to say something. This regulation change is actually designed to help you. The fuel suppliers are consolidated. Petronas is supplying 4 teams. That means shared development costs, shared knowledge. It's not perfect parity, but it's a step toward leveling the playing field. To any team that's struggling right now, that's worried about 2026, keep pushing. The sport needs you. Every constructor brings something unique. Every team has engineers who love this sport as much as we do. The new regulations might just be your opportunity. All right, prediction time. What happens in 2026? Here's what I think. Chaos, at least at the start. We're going to see big performance gaps based on fuel quality alone. Teams with better fuel might dominate the first few races before others catch up. If Aramco's head start translates to actual performance, Aston Martin could genuinely be fighting at the front. Alonso winning races at 44 years old because of superior fuel chemistry? I would love that. Even if you're not an Alonso fan, you have to admit that would be an amazing story. But I also think things will level out by mid-season. The FIA has built in a ceiling on how much advantage you can get from fuel. Eventually, everyone will converge. Maybe a wild first half, then back to normal F1 where it comes down to aero and chassis. The honest answer is nobody really knows. It's such a massive regulation change that anything could happen. When was the last time F1 felt this unpredictable? 2022 with the ground effect cars? But even then, Red Bull figured it out pretty quickly. This feels bigger somehow.
You know what gets me? The whole thing is kind of beautiful when you step back and think about it. Fuel made from air and water and sunshine, powering cars at 350 kilometers an hour. The fastest, most advanced racing machines on the planet running on recycled carbon. And if it works in F1, if it really works, it could change everything. 1 billion cars on the road, existing infrastructure, drop-in fuel. This isn't just about racing. This is about proving that performance and environmental responsibility can coexist. That's the real prize. So, the next time someone tells you F1 is just cars going around in circles wasting fuel, you can tell them about electrolysis and carbon capture and Fischer-Tropsch synthesis. You can tell them about the 1 billion cars this technology could help. You can tell them F1 is literally inventing the fuel of the future. That's all for today's episode of F1 Burnouts. Thank you so much for listening. If this made you think differently about sustainable fuel, share it with someone. If you enjoyed it, leave a review. And if you've got questions or topics you want me to cover, reach out. I read everything. Until next time, keep the rubber on the track. And remember, the future of fuel is being written on every lap. Take care of yourselves out there.
Not 50-50, 100% zero fossil carbon. That's the mandate from the FIA, and it's absolute. Now let me explain why this matters so much to me personally. I care deeply about